All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
What up, everybody? It is Monday. The world is ending, and it's so great to be with you. Oh, my gosh. There's no group I'd rather be with as the world ends than this group right here. Yes. What? We've got the serious, we've got the weird, we have the troubling. We have it all today. And I have a couple of terrific guests, I think, that will shed some light on situations that might need a little light and perspective. I've also received a bunch of emails on particularly, a lot of things, but particularly what's going on in the Middle East. And so I will respond and even represent some of those emails in some of our conversations today. I think you'll begin to know what I'm saying as the show goes on. Kim is here, which is always a special thing. So,
Kim, how are you?
And Albert is here, which is also a special thing. The commissioner of all things sports on our show. If you're a Niners fan, and we do have a few in this crowd, not the best weekend, oddly. Yeah. The rain fell on the Niners and seemed to be an issue. Seems the Niners are a dry weather team, Commissioner. That's what I would suggest to you. Is that correct?
They struggled a little bit. We lost a couple of our weapons. A couple of our pieces were gone throughout the game. It was a tough game, but when you put yourself into a position where you're hoping your kicker wins the game for you, when they don't make it, you kind of put that on yourself. I don't like to put that on the kicker. He's a rookie kicker. His family was in the stands too, so I feel bad for the kid. But,
yeah, I was gonna say, especially since they got rid of that golden guy, right? The really good
who's
kicker.
Gold.
Yeah, he's just like us.
Gold.
Like he's just watching football every Sunday. He doesn't have a team right now, so
yeah. Well,
that's about my extent of contribution to the football conversation.
No, I thought you were quite impressive, Kim.
The Robin Gold expert.
That golden guy. Yeah, right.
Well, the other thing that I would say, Albert, and I don't mean to be too tough on the kicker either. I mean, that is the job, though, that you are supposed to kick in critical situations. And I can play the other end, which is, and your family's in the stands, so all the more reason to hit the kick. Okay, I'm just saying. So, yeah, but there's so much pressure. Yo, that's what the gig is. It's a pressure gig. You thought you were just going to come in for the times we didn't really need a field goal? That's not
what
as
you
hard.
Signed up for. It's definitely what you signed up for. And those are the moments they dream of too, winning the games off their foot.
And I'm kind of being a little humorous about it because it does suck. And let me tell you, I would definitely miss the field goal. Like, I'm the worst guy to handle those pressure situations. But the Niners, the note that the Niners shouldn't have been in that situation to begin with is an excellent one. And the other note that the Niners lost key members of their roster through the game. That's when you see Deebo Samuel on the sideline in street clothes, that's
and
bad.
Then Christian McCaffrey was in and out, and bad weather, and that Browns defense is very, very good, very tough, and Brock was definitely feeling the urgency with everybody trying to kill him there. So it was a lot of bad combinations for us. But, I'm glad we lost, kind of a reset. And I think next week if you're a betting man, you bet the over for the Niners next week.
Well, I definitely think these teams like the Niners coming off big losses and unexpected losses on some level, they are a good bet the next week. But
yeah, Eagles too. Eagles lost. There's no more undefeated teams in the NFL. So it was kind of like a bad week of football, Mark. I watched a lot of games. It was kind of not pretty and a couple good plays, but not compared to the previous weeks this year.
And the gamblers, if you're a gambler or if you follow gambling, because we are becoming a nation where gambling is legal and it's crazy. You just got FanDuel.
Betting? What's that?
Yeah, it's unreal.
On 810, Kim, 810.
Yet another way that Americans can fritter away their fortunes. The the House, if you want to think of the people that book the bets, right? The FanDuels of this world, et cetera. They did very well this weekend. This was the weekend that they got whole because up until this point, the favorites had covered. The favorites had won. And so the public tends to bet the favorites. This weekend, as Albert just said, Niners, Eagles, favorites went down. So that's that. And I hope everybody had a good weekend. It was really cool to reflect on the past week. We still are getting in some anniversary greetings, which we shall share with you in the minutes ahead. So appreciate everybody's support of the show. And we work really hard to bring you this show every day, and we'll continue now into the second year. We're just, kind of celebrating our first anniversary. We've been celebrating it for the last week or so, probably celebrate it for the next week, too, by sharing some of these videos. And the last thing I'll say is that something we didn't say last week happened, which is we passed 14,000 subscribers, which is, again, in the great YouTube universe where there are all kinds of, people knocking down serious subscriberships. That may not seem like a lot, but when you've been, pushing the rock up the hill for the last year, we feel really good about that. So thanks to everybody who's recommended the show, shared the show, Facebook, and all the other places that you share various things. You can share shorts, you can share videos. If David K. Johnson has a video that you like, share it to Facebook and subscribe. Suggest that your friends subscribe. So thank you for that.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Breaking news in the Donald Trump world before I get to the Middle East. Donald Trump gets a gag order. That's right. The judge has granted a gag order in the 2020 election case. So this is the federal case, right? That's Tanya Chutkin, the U.S. District Judge. Jack Smith, who is on the federal side, the special counsel, he requested this gag order because Trump's been threatening both Trump and his hench people, threatening those involved in the case, everyone from the judge to prosecutors and it's thought that will intimidate witnesses, right? So now the judge, Tanya Chutkin, has granted this limited gag order request to prevent former President Trump from attacking prosecutors, witnesses, and court officials involved in his federal case. This is the case over the 2020 election overturn. Chutkin prohibited all parties in the case, including Trump, from making or reposting any statements publicly targeting Smith or his staff, the court, or the staff of the court, and prohibited statements about witnesses or their expected testimony. Chutkin said that Trump can continue to campaign for the Republican nomination and say that he believes the case is politically motivated. She says that you can still do that, but you're not allowed to, quote, launch a pre-trial smear campaign to intimidate or discredit witnesses or staff. Quote, this is not about whether or not I like the language Mr. Trump uses. This is about language that presents a danger to the administration of justice. His presidential candidacy does not give him carte blanche to vilify public servants who are simply doing their jobs. Vilify is a ding word. I cannot imagine any other criminal case where a defendant is allowed to call a prosecutor deranged or a thug. No other defendant would be allowed to do it, and I'm not going to allow it in this case, she went on.
We'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah.
How long can he keep his big mouth closed?
I saw an interesting, let me see if I can find it, one of Trump's.
And if he does open his big flappy lips, does that mean he gets put into the holding cell in the contempt of court place?
I don't like how you speak.
Don't talk to me that way.
The big flappy, I don't think you need to say that, Kim.
Okay.
Kim's more in the insult.
Sorry.
I
comes
try to
from a place of honesty and truth.
Okay. The thing I wanted to share with you is that one of his spokespeople issued this statement. Today's decision is an absolute abomination and another partisan knife stuck in the heart of our democracy by crooked Joe Biden, who was granted the right to muzzle his political opponent, the leading candidate for the presidency in 2024 and the most popular political leader in America, President Donald J. Trump. President Trump will continue to fight for our Constitution, the American people's right to support him, and to keep our country free the chains of weaponized and targeted law enforcement. I'll draw your attention to the first line, which states, again, today's decision is they're talking about the gag, right? The gag order. Yeah. Is an absolute abomination and another partisan knife stuck in the heart of our democracy. I mean, the gall it takes for a group of people who literally tried to overturn an election and completely derail democracy and continue to try to do so. The idea that you would in any way characterize this as a knife in democracy, please. It's very funny. It's funny were it not so serious. I mean, you know. Anyway, the trial of Trump goes on. He's charged with engaging, as you know, in conspiracies to overturn the results of the 2020 election in order to stay in power, despite having lost to Joe Biden. So it's conspiracy to defraud the U.S., conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, conspiracy against rights, obstruction of or an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding. And, of course, he's pleaded not guilty. But that's the news out of Trump land. The gag order is in place. And
The Mark Thompson Show.
So you have that. Did I mention John Rothmann's coming up? Bottom of the hour? I don't think that I did. In addition to John Rothmann, Anthony Davis, my favorite Britisher, will be on after the top of the second hour. And we'll talk more about what's going on in Gaza, the Middle East, where I think there are no good options, but actions will be taken. And we'll talk about that both with Rothmann and with Anthony. And before we get to them, I thought I'd offer you a couple of words on all of this and some perspective, maybe with a small p on this, because I think it's a very complicated and nuanced world. And to see everything in black and white is a real, I think it just doesn't honor how difficult a situation is really unfolding here. You have ethnicities, you have religion, you have militarism, you have power grabs. All of this is going on, has been going on for, many, many years. And as I think I may have mentioned to you, I always see the situation in the Middle East as when you walked into the movie. If you just walked into the movie right now and you've seen the horror that is Hamas, the wanton killing, the deliberate mowing down of festival goers, of the taking of, now it looks like 200 captors back into Gaza. These are innocent civilians, unarmed, mothers, children, infants. If you just walked in then the rage would motivate an immense response. And to be fair, after 9/11, and I could argue this is worse as far as Israel's concerned than 9/11. After 9/11, if the U.S. had done nothing but, served up some intense, strong rhetoric, there would have been tremendous blowback on the part of the people. I don't think you politically could have gotten away with that. I'll remind you, after 9/11, people were signing up for the military. They wanted to go fight somebody. They wanted to go do something. And that same instinct and urge exists in the Middle East on the part of Israelis who feel violated. Now, at the same time, I should also say that what also exists, it coexists in Israel, is a strong sense of don't go in and obliterate Gaza or make the Palestinians, who don't even like Hamas in large measure, don't make them pay a price for what Hamas has done. So back to the movie. If you walked into the movie earlier, you know, well, Gazans are living in this place of utter awfulness, you know, the open-air prison, all of the different parallels you've heard. And so, and this is what I'm getting in a lot of your emails, one can understand what led to this, the level of frustration. Well, I can understand what leads to a level of frustration. I can't understand what led to this. Hamas did something that is absolutely unjustifiable, full stop. And the idea that I don't condone what Hamas did and it was just awful, but there's no but at the end of this. And I think that's where there's a moral confusion going on. Now, again, back to the movie, though. If you're in Gaza, you're thinking, well, what do we do? Where our movements are monitored, our state is controlled, and now you think, well, yeah, they're frustrated, they need to do something, and their pleas are being ignored by the world community. And then you go back further in the movie. Well, the Israelis were in Gaza, and they left Gaza because you guys, this is to represent the Israeli position, wanted, you Palestinians, you wanted Israelis out. No more Jews in Gaza. So they forcibly, the Israelis did in 2005, they got rid of their own people from Gaza. I mean, it was not easy. Many, you know, there were factories and pharmacies and orchards. They said, leave them, get out, we're leaving. We're giving this to the Palestinians. And then, of course, within a year or so, Hamas was the elected leadership of Gaza, and Hamas, bent on Israeli destruction, began this whole period of terror. Hamas, and this is where you get into the nuance part of it, and I'll talk to Rothmann about this, Hamas emerged because, in part, this is something else I got an email about, and it is true, in part, the Netanyahu government felt Hamas would be a useful political chess piece in all of the developments of the Middle East. It's true. The Netanyahu government felt that the infighting that would be produced between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, which is the other major group that is involved representing the Palestinians, they've been essentially marginalized, and they just don't have the heft of these other, I'll just call them Islamic organizations, Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, and Hamas, of course. They would be useful, the thought was, in kind of just keeping them fighting over authority, and in so doing, weakening any real force with agency to negotiate a peace with the Israelis. If you followed all of that, that's all true, what I've just told you, and it speaks to the texture of the region. And that's not even the whole movie. That's just since 2000. If you go back further, you get into, well, who was there first? But we don't even have to get into who was there. That's way at the beginning of the movie. You get into the Yom Kippur War, and you get into the 67 confrontation, and land that was captured during war. What you do with that. So you can see this is a much, much more complicated and subtle situation filled with nuance and contradiction. And so as we try to figure this out now as to what the Israelis should do, it's against that backdrop that a lot of these decisions are being made. There's a brilliant writer and thinker and philosopher. He wrote a book called Sapiens, which I really recommend to you. Even if you're not a reader, just kind of leaf through a bit of it, man. It's great. here's a bit of, he's Israeli, okay? I'll tell you the truth, I didn't even realize he was Israeli. I've read a bunch of his stuff. Maybe I'm just, so dim. I just never focused on where he came from. Here he is speaking over the weekend, and I just like it for how he represents a little of what the Israelis are thinking and the problem and challenges that have emerged. Here's a little bit of it.
Questions are being asked about the ramifications of this crisis and how the region got here in the first place and where it is going to end up. So let's get some perspective now. Yuval Noah Harari is a historian, a public intellectual, best-selling author behind books like Sapiens, and he joins me now here in London. Welcome back to our program.
Thank you, Christian.
When this all happened, Israelis were saying, and the world was saying, oh my gosh, look at this date, October 7th, almost exactly 50 years since Yom Kippur. And they thought maybe that was the context in which to look at it. But it's not like that anymore, is it?
Oh, in Israel now, everybody's talking in terms of comparisons with the Holocaust, comparisons with pogroms, waged for centuries against Jews. Because what happened is that entire communities were slaughtered systematically. It was not an attack on military units or military bases. It was an attack aimed to simply annihilate entire communities. My aunt and uncle live in one of these communities, Kibbutz Be'eri. They hid themselves in their house as terrorists just went. The Hamas took over the entire village and just for hours moved systematically from house to house, slaughtering family after family. My uncle, who is 99 years old, and my aunt, 89 years old, they hid themselves in their house and they somehow survived. But many of my friends and family, they just received the worst news of their lives. And there is shock in Israel about the inability of the army to reach these villages in time. But again, the memories, they go back to the Holocaust and to the pogroms. And the other thing which is really shocking and really changes the whole perspective, because we've been through these rounds of violence every 2-3 years, but the feeling is that this is completely different now, that the terrorists, they not only went after civilians, but they murdered them and tortured them deliberately in just the worst possible ways they could imagine, ISIS style. I mean, decapitations, killing parents in front of their children. And the third thing is, they didn't try to hide the atrocities. They deliberately wanted people to see the atrocities, even down to filming them and posting them online on social media. And you ask yourself, why would they do that? And the impression is they just wanted to, it's psychological warfare, again, ISIS style, aimed not only to spread terror, but to sow seeds of hatred that will ensure that this turban conflict will go on for generations. You know, part of the background is the approach for a deal between Israel and Saudi Arabia, a peace agreement that should have included also some improvement in the situation of the Palestinians. And this is the background to this attack. And Hamas, since its foundation, never accepted the existence of Israel and never accepted any attempt at peace. The aim was not just to destroy Jewish communities, but to assassinate any chance for peace.
And so many
that's
children.
Great. Stop
well,
there, Albert. I think
mentioned.
that I wanted to set both the context, which I think, and that last point that he makes, I think is critical. It's the point that I was making here the other day, which is that, committed to derailing any kind of peace plan. That's where Hamas is. And so if it takes this big an attack, this kind of wanton violence against civilians to overturn, and it also exposes the Israeli military and government as asleep at the switch. So it begins a lot of rancor within Israel, and it gets the Saudis to pull out, which is pretty much what's happening. It's Saudis, and they were about to normalize relations, and now they're in a very tough spot. I mean, how do you do that in the face of what will now be Israeli aggression, right? Then they've succeeded. Then that's Hamas's deal. So I'll have Rothmann in minutes, and I will push back on him a little bit on certain things. I get your emails about. I think Rothmann's I really do think Rothmann's a good historian and his book just arrived a couple days ago here at the great Mark Thompson Studios. So thank you, Pinky. A shout out. Thank you for the contribution.
Big shout out.
Yeah, super sticker. In the super chat, good morning, everyone. Usually watch you on replay. Love John Rothmann, says Elwin. What up, Elwin? Big shout out.
Big shout out.
Mm-hmm. By the way, the video of everybody's anniversary videos, Tony put it all together, and it exists on our channel as a separate video. If you haven't found it, you can find it under videos. Just find anniversary videos, and you'll see them all. Most of them. A couple of them didn't get in there because they came in late, and we got a couple in just this morning that we'll share with you now. So they're not in there, obviously, but a lot of the other ones are, and I think you'll enjoy those. I have one other bit of effed up news related to this crisis and as it affects us here. What do we do here, Kim and Albert? Do we go to Rothmann? Do we do a Kim news capsule, then go to Rothmann? Help me.
I think we go to John Rothmann because I know he is fitting us in today and he has to leave by noon. So I just want to make sure that we get him where he needs to be. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very good. So let me just give you this one piece before I get to Rothmann.
The Mark Thompson Show.
There's going to be a funeral and burial held today for the 6-year-old boy who was fatally stabbed when his Chicago area landlord allegedly attacked him and his mother because they're Muslims. This is the crap that happens from all of this. Just brutal. Left the mother seriously injured. It's being investigated as a hate crime. The guy is a 71-year-old Joseph M. Ksuba, charged with first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, 2 counts of hate crime, aggravated battery, etc. What he did was he stabbed this poor boy to death. 6-year-old kid.
And attacked the mother as well, I believe.
Right, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
So the boy dies from the wounds. The mother does not. I thought you can throw up his mugshot. He was stabbed 26 times and died.
Oh, awful.
The mother, 32 years old, Hanan Shaheen. She had more than a dozen stab wounds, is recovering at the hospital, is expected to survive. Just again, it's the unintended consequence of all of this hate and violence. And there he is. He'll go away for the rest of his life, 71. But that happened not in the Middle East, happened in Joliet, Illinois, right here in this country. So we move on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, another bigot who thinks, here it is from John, all Muslims support Hamas and terrorism, like people who think all Palestinians are anti-Semitic and support Hamas, or who think that all Israelis are the devil. And, the irony of the attack on the Israelis is that many of them were peaceniks. They were living in kibbutzes that were dedicated actually to trying to build a bridge to some kind of Palestinian coexistence. Many of them were bilingual because they were that committed to trying to build that bridge. So, look, this guy, your book just arrived a couple of days ago here at the studio. I meant to bring it on. I don't know. I've got the hard cover. He's a great historian on the Middle East, and let's hear what he has to say on this day that looks as though it's going to bring very likely the Israeli military into Gaza. Here's John Rothmann, everybody. John, it's I think there are no good moves here, and I'm wondering if you could advise the Israelis what you might do in this particular spot. And then we'll go take a jetliner view at the whole situation in history. But first, the situation as it sits today.
Well, the first and most important thing is that Israel is determined to protect itself. This attack a week ago Saturday has been so devastating, it is almost beyond words. It would be the equivalent, Mark, of 40,000 Americans being killed in a single attack. In my conversations with friends in Israel, there is not a single Israeli who does not know somebody or lost somebody. And now the announcement this morning that there are 199 hostages that the Israelis believe Hamas now holds. There is no good answer. And everybody needs to know this is a tragedy all the way around. We are told, and you're on top of the news as I am, that the President of the United States is planning to go to Israel this week. Why is the President going? Because he wants to make clear the American commitment to Israel. But please understand, there is something far more significant that is going on. If Hezbollah in Lebanon, by the way, not Lebanon, but Hezbollah, which occupies southern Lebanon, begins to send rockets into Israel, they have, we are told, 150,000 rockets provided by Iran. If those rockets begin to fly, let me be crystal clear, so there is no ambiguity. Iron Dome cannot shoot down that many rockets. Impossible. And that will mean that there will be devastation in northern Israel, in Tel Aviv, in Haifa. Why has the United States of America sent the USS Eisenhower and the USS Gerald Ford to the Middle East? It is a way of saying to Iran and to Hezbollah, do not act, for we are there as a shield, not just for Israel, but for the West. One other quick comment, if I may, Mark. Yesterday on Venezuelan television, Mahmoud Abbas finally broke his silence and condemned Hamas. But you will note that only hours after the president of the Palestinian Authority spoke, he had to retreat and say, well, he didn't really mean it. I want people to understand the Israelis are in an intractable situation, but so are the people of Gaza. Do you understand? They are victims here. When Ariel Sharon, the prime minister of Israel, who we used to say affectionately was like a bull who carried with him his own china shop, ordered Israeli settlers and troops, all Jews, out of Gaza. The hope was that Gaza would turn into the Singapore of the Middle East. But Hamas took over in a bloody coup, and hope faded. I don't have an answer, Mark, except to tell you there will be great devastation. It is a humanitarian crisis, one for which we should all feel deep sadness. But out of the ashes of what I think is inevitable may come what followed the defeat of Germany and Japan in World War II. Out of the ashes rose democracies in Germany and Japan. We can only hope for the Palestinian people, for their sake, and yes, for the sake of Israel, that such a result will be as a result of this war.
Well, the international community, to your last point, is going to have to ride to some kind of role at the end of all of this. And I don't know how Israel goes into Gaza door to door, house to house. I was watching Petraeus. In fact, I had Albert pull the video.
Yeah,
I don't think we're going
to have time
to run it.
It's very interesting to watch General Petraeus, yes.
Yeah, Petraeus, I don't know, I almost feel like we should run a little bit of it, but I'd rather talk to you. But essentially he says, this is an incredibly difficult situation. You have high-rise buildings. You've got to clear each and every room. Many of them will be booby-trapped. There'll be every manner of a suicide vest-wearing terrorist in the midst of all of that. He said there are going to be huge casualties. And then, you still have to go and clear all of this area to really root out Hamas. And we've talked about this, John, the last few visits. It will take a long, long time, months and months and months, if it's even possible. It's a hydra. I mean, you can cut off its head, and I think Hamas reemerges. You
Absolutely.
You can certainly take away their political dominance in Gaza, probably. But
no, it's 100% right.
But at what price, John? At what price?
Every time a Palestinian dies in this war, there will be a greater radicalization. And I said Palestinian, not just Hamas. The Palestinian people are feeling this. Why do you think Abbas had to make the statement he made? I want to say something very controversial. I hope you don't mind my doing that. I received an email from someone saying, well, if only there were a Palestinian state on the West Bank, everything would be fine. And my answer was, if you look at the geography, you know that Israel is only 9 miles wide at its narrowest. Mark, I know people who jog 9 miles every day. I am not one of them. If there had been a Palestinian state on the West Bank governed by Hamas, which is most certainly what the outcome would be, the tragedy here would be far greater, far more difficult to resolve. You're correct. There is no right answer. So let me tell you what Israel is doing. Israel is saying our job is to protect our citizens. That's what our job is. And they said, we are going to do it. I want to emphasize something that I feel very deeply, and that is this is not the fault of Israel. It is the fault of Hamas. Imagine, please, if there had been a peaceful Gaza governed by Palestinians who wanted peace and reconciliation, which was the goal of the Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. Imagine how history would have been different. And by the way, I don't like the term collateral damage, Mark. I never use it. There's nothing collateral about death. There's nothing collateral about suffering. And we're going to see, I regret to say, much more in the next few days, and if I may be so bold, the next few hours. And
yeah, I don't think, I'm sorry, Kim, did you have something for John?
I just have a question, and it really is a question because I try to understand all this, and because I don't, as Mark talked about, if you're just coming into the movie, right? Because I haven't been paying attention to all of it as long as you have. I come from a place of not understanding it as much. So I'll start there, but I have a question about something you just said, which is they have no choice to respond. But isn't it always a choice of how we respond? So if you slapped me, I could either slap you back, think about things for a bit, and then make a choice. It's basically, it's my decision on how I respond to what you've done to me. And if Israel knows that there's all these innocent people in the Gaza Strip area, then isn't it on them, their response to this? And don't they have a responsibility to then be careful in the way they respond and maybe target the people that went after them instead of all the innocents?
It's not a slap. That's the point.
That was bad. That was my bad analogy.
No, I know,
but I'm just saying, like,
it's a great way of putting it. Into these kibbutzim, into these villages, into the music festival, and I watched CNN's special last night with absolute horror. Innocent children, men, women. No, wait. I want you to understand.
No, listen, I understand. Yeah. We don't need to rehash what happened because I get what happened. Okay. What I'm talking about is specifically the response.
How do you respond? That's the question.
That's how we started this conversation. How do you respond? So you have to begin to pull away from if I slapped or it's 9/11, or you have to begin to actually look at the specifics of this situation. What would be appropriate? You can't countenance it, but then as Kim says, you know, I think in some polling, 70% of the Palestinians who live in Gaza don't approve of Hamas, but they're essentially under a Hamas dictatorship, yet they have to pay the price. What do you do? So, Kim, what would you suggest be done?
Hold on.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, John.
The same thing with Afghanistan. Most people in Afghanistan did not support the Taliban. We went in and we did it clumsily and badly. And who now rules in Afghanistan?
The Taliban. Right.
And who are suffering? The people.
Yep.
Well, let me frame this in a different way. Israel was created so Jews would not suffer these kinds of attacks. And Israel as a nation cannot sustain itself, nor can its citizens survive without absolute confidence in the ability of the government to protect them. And I think that's the dilemma. And Kim, you've summed it up beautifully. You're absolutely right. At this moment, it's not history that matters, it's what is happening on the ground. The Israelis could have gone in immediately, smashed and destroyed. They didn't. They said, go out. Now wait, who's blocking Palestinians from leaving Gaza? Hamas, and Egypt shut its doors. And, you know, I can only tell you, it's not a solvable problem. I understand. But when you have Hamas using their own people as human shields, when you have that threat, how do you respond? What is the first obligation of every government? It is to protect its citizens. And may I tell you the trauma in Israel? Because Israel was created to protect its citizens, is the government failed. And I can assure you, when all is said and done in Israel, there will be a national reckoning. I know of no one who is happy about what has happened.
Yeah.
But when you consider, and I ask you all to consider this, when you consider that there is not a citizen of Israel who has not been affected by this, and somebody used the term revenge. No, I don't view it as revenge, even if somebody else calls it revenge. What is the first obligation? To secure the protection of your citizens. And so that is the challenge for Israel, and it's not easy.
Can I just one more? I'm so
Sure.
sorry. It's something that's been weighing heavily on me. Can you support Israel and feel awful about what happened in Israel and want Israel to be a country and to have its people be peaceful and happy and safe, while at the same time not wanting Palestinians to be killed, because most of the people in that country, from what I'm reading, are very young. There's a lot of children.
Over 50% of the people in Gaza are under the age.
So can
like
you
just said.
can you feel for both? And
Yes.
and sometimes if you say both sides of the conflict, well, people will say, well, there was only one side, but
No.
there isn't. There are two sides of the conflict, and there are two groups of people that are being hurt. And so, is it possible to feel compassion for both
Of
sides
course.
without being labeled some type of
Yes.
sympathizer for one
May I
side
tell
or
you
the other?
who were the people who were killed? And Mark pointed this out in his opening monologue. The people who were killed were people who primarily were peaceniks.
Yeah.
One of the women was she was in charge of birthing children, Arab and Jewish. They didn't care. People in the kibbutzim who spoke Arabic, they didn't care. I'm going to say something that pains me, but when you're dealing with people who hate, people who have no compassion, I listened last night on CNN, the Hamas terrorists were laughing as they executed people, laughing as they threw hand grenades into the bomb shelters. I don't want to rehash the horror, but your question is a good one. Golda Meir once said something that I believe sums it all up beautifully. We can forgive the Arabs for killing our sons, but we cannot forgive them for making our sons kill their sons. That to me is the essence. No one rejoices in Israel over what is happening. And as Mark rightly pointed out, the ramifications of this are going to grow. I weep not just for Israelis. I weep for the people of Gaza who are victims. But if you ask me, who is responsible for what has happened? Hamas.
But
Please note I didn't say the Palestinians. I don't blame the Palestinians.
If you never have a moment where someone stands up and says, enough, I know that you've done this horrible thing to me, unspeakable violence, but I choose not to react by killing innocent people. I choose not to react by, and this could be both sides. Is there ever a moment where someone's going to say enough with the killing?
Yes.
And because if you don't do that, then you're always going to get what you've always gotten, which is just more and more fighting
Kim,
and brutality.
I remember the words of Menachem Begin, who set the standard for Israeli withdrawal, who said, no more killing, no more war, but it takes two to tango. Yeah. If our listeners have not read the Hamas covenant, I urge you to do it. You can Google it. They believe in the protocols of the elders of Zion and international Jewish conspiracy. They believe in the death of Jews, not just Israelis. How do you deal? What do you do? And so you're right. You're right. I wish someone would say enough.
Well,
I've been
let me
waiting-
just put
Yeah.
a specific face
Sure.
on a little bit of what Kim is asking about, and then I want to push back on one thing. But you know, this speaks to what John is saying, and you know, the idea somehow that, well, why don't you sit down? This is sort of the implication of what Kim is saying, and broker some kind of peace, some kind of arrangement, some kind of coexistence, even though this horror has happened. You know, Kim is sort of saying, you know, somebody's got to stop. I can challenge that on a million different levels, but I'm just going to play this one thing out because it's a fact that, and this speaks to what Rothmann is saying, when they were close to peace before, that's always when Hamas hits. When in the Oslo Accords, look at it, Google it, look it up.
Google it.
This is when Hamas begins a big flex. And so here, close to a Saudi arrangement with Israel that would normalize relations, you get a super flex. I mean, this is insane. As I've told you, we established in the first half hour, it way surpasses 9/11. It's being talked about in Israel as pogrom-like, Holocaust-like. And so you see that to sit down and begin peace talks, that's the very thing that provokes from a hate group this kind of terrorism. So
you have to have
this
somebody...
is why I say, excuse me, let me just finish my thought, John, and then I will turn it to you. This is why I say Israel's in a tough spot. And that's why I say to Kim, what do you want them to do? Yeah. And again, I get it. I don't want them to level Gaza. I know what I don't want them to do. I don't want them Palestinians to pay this price. I know I don't want them to do that. But I'm stuck if I'm an Israeli or if I'm the Israeli government as to what to do. And this has been a brutal government on the Palestinians, John. You will give me that.
Oh, yes. Look, Mark, the simple answer is you're right. And Kim is right. But you don't want to bend so far that you break. Hamas won't sit down and talk to Israel. Hamas says the Jews must die, Israel must cease to exist, Palestine must be liberated. How do you reach a modus vivendi? The Israelis tried. And I want to say it one more time. They withdrew from Gaza. They took out every settlement, every Jew. And the hope was that out of that would emerge peace. It didn't. And so I don't have an answer. Nobody does. But I can tell you one thing. There is a slogan in Israel, Ein Breira in Hebrew. It means no alternative. I think it's better than never again. Israel will not roll over in the face of terror. And if we want to end this, let the Palestinians throw Hamas out. Let them stand up and assert that. We want to have faith in Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, who finally, more than a week later, says something, and then, because what he said offends the very people who he represents, has to retreat from it. You know, you can't make peace with people who don't want peace. Peace is not in the lexicon of Hamas. So listen, I refuse to despair. I agree with Kim, absolutely. And I agree with you, Mark. But I also believe very strongly that one thing the Jews have learned, and it's a powerful lesson, they will not go silently to slaughter again.
So, John, I want to ask you then about the disposition of Israel toward Palestinians on the West Bank and in Gaza. The thing I get constantly, and again, this is not a justification, but it's against this backdrop that a lot of stuff happens. The second-class citizen status that Palestinians had in the West Bank, the trying to control the movements of Palestinians within the West Bank world. Now, I have my own answers as to why some of this happened, but the one thing I hear in emails that are sent to me, and I'm sure you get it as well, is can you push back on Rothmann because we're hearing the Israeli side. I think you try to represent both sides, but clearly you have such connection to Israel. I'm wondering if you can speak to this thing that has emerged where Palestinians have to find themselves essentially not having the rights of movement and many of the other freedoms that come with being citizens, full-fledged citizens, either in Gaza or in
There's one
in the
word,
West Bank.
Trust. You have to trust. Every time Israel puts down its guard, there are terrorist attacks. I had a very good friend blown up on a bus in Jerusalem. Now, the Israelis are doing everything they can in a positive way. But my friends, remember the expression, it takes two to tango. If you're going to build trust, you have to have a partner with whom you can build trust. And that partner, regrettably, despite everything that Israel has tried, has not emerged. The polls in Israel show that more than 80% of Israelis would support the creation of a Palestinian state tomorrow if it would bring peace. Okay, so Israel withdraws from Gaza. They withdraw all the Jewish settlements. They withdraw all of the Jews. They make it a Judenrein, free of Jews. Did that bring peace? Did that bring understanding? Did that bring reconciliation? No, it brought war. And on the West Bank, Israel has tried desperately. You know what they finally had to do, Mark? I'll quickly tell you a story. When I first went to Israel in 1968, there were no walls. I could go anywhere. I went to Gaza. I went all through the West Bank. And there was a belief, and this kills me to say, there was a belief that if Jewish children played together in the same parks, if Arabs and Jews shopped in the same stores, if they could celebrate each other's holidays, that there would be peace. And I believe that. And one of the most shocking things to me was when Israel had to build a wall to prevent terror from striking at the heart of their country. I don't know what the answer is, but I can tell you Israel is going nowhere. The Palestinians are going nowhere. There has to be some rapprochement, and that is why I say what I said before. I hope that out of the terror and the ashes of this war, what happened in Germany and Japan will happen in the Middle East. One more point. This is not a war against Palestinians. It is a war against Hamas. And tragically, Hamas has used the people in Gaza as human shields to pursue their nefarious attitudes and activities.
Well, I mean, they're ruthless and brutal beyond nefarious.
And that's the problem.
Yeah,
How do you sit down and negotiate with people like that? By the way, I think if Hamas gave up its covenant and said we want to negotiate, Israel would do it. I believe that. As they did with the PLO, which had a covenant calling for the destruction of Israel, I would remind you.
I'll follow up on this in the next half hour as to this conflict becoming even broader, bigger than it is. But I think the animation of what's happened on the Lebanese border, where Hezbollah, and this is an important distinction, I think, they have an actual country. No, they don't. They occupy the southern part of a country. They control the southern part of Lebanon. They have something at stake. And that is different than Hamas. They have nothing at stake. Hamas can burn the whole place down, and that's what they want to do.
I'm sorry. I'm going to disagree with you very respectfully.
All right.
Hamas is determined to destroy Israel. I don't know if you listen to what Nasrallah says. I don't know if you follow Hezbollah. You don't accumulate 150,000 missiles, maintain a militia, because you're peaceful people.
Who said anything about them being peaceful?
Nasrallah's goal is the destruction of Israel.
I love two people yelling at. I love me yelling at Rothmann when I'm agreeing with him. Can't you hear what I'm saying? I'm saying they control a part of Lebanon. They do, John, and so they have something even more at stake, if you will, than Hamas does. I mean, their agency here is strong, but I think for them to become involved, they could suffer a real loss, of political control in southern Lebanon.
I hope you're right. We don't have the Eisenhower and the Ford positioned where they are now because we believe that Nasrallah will provide a rational response or that Iran will provide a rational response. There is a disconnect, Mark, between those who proceed rationally and those who proceed irrationally. And I can only tell you that when the Oslo Accords were signed in 1993, there was a rational basis for concluding that there might be a peace. It is not Israel which has prevented that peace. It is not Israel which has stood as an obstacle. The problem here is Israel doesn't have a war with the Palestinians. It has a war with those, including Hamas and Hezbollah, who favor their destruction. And I know it's hard for people to conceive, but that is what this is about. It is an existential threat to the survival of Israel. So let me be honest. You want to solve the problem? Let Israel disappear. That's what they say. Just let Israel disappear. And I want to guarantee you one thing. Absolutely. Israel will not disappear. And if they are forced to defend themselves and to fight back, Israel will, because they don't have a choice. You know what Golda Meir, it's funny, Golda Meir once said, we have no other place to go. And an Israeli general, just day before yesterday, used the same expression. We have no place else to go. And you understand that Hamas's goal is, and Nasrallah's goal, is the removal of Israel from the map. And that I know it's hard to conceive. I know. And I'm not saying it because I'm a Jew and because I believe in Israel's right to exist. That's not why I'm saying it. But I'm saying it because we, as civilized people, have to understand that what we witnessed in Gaza was the ultimate degradation of civilization.
Hey,
That's
John,
the
how
point.
did Hamas get so much power in Gaza? They were voted in legitimately or not?
Yes, what happened is there was an election. And you may recall on KGO, I talked about this. I said Hamas will win such an election. And the
And
reason
why did you
they
say
won,
that? Why were they more desirable as to lead than the Palestinian Authority?
because the Palestinian Authority is thoroughly corrupt.
Okay.
And Hamas said, we will give you honest government. And to their credit, who ran all the social welfare, the hospitals, the schools, everything in Gaza? It was Hamas. That's why Hamas was so popular. And
it was like John Gotti throwing the parade in New York, I mean, if you will.
Yeah, and I understand it completely. But what Hamas emerged to become, when they overthrew the Palestinian Authority and they won an election, do you remember what they did to members of the PA, the Palestinian Authority, who were their leadership? They took them to the top of the tallest buildings in Gaza and threw them off the buildings. You can Google it. You can see it for yourself. And then you are confronted with a real question. I believe that if the people of Gaza could throw Hamas off, maybe if the Palestinian Authority had had the strength, the wisdom, and the honesty to really conduct its policy properly, maybe the whole world would have been different. Do you know, I believe something, Mark. If Gaza had been turned into a model of peace and cooperation and conciliation with aid from the West, you would have seen more compromise on the West Bank. You would have seen proof in the pudding. So what will happen now in Israel is a reaction. What they've seen is that when they tried constructively to do something, and look what they were hit with. The Palestinians have a long way to go to build confidence among Israelis. And as I said earlier, it takes two to tango. But this is not a war against the Palestinians. It is a war against Hamas. And every time you hear a demonstration where the chant from, unfortunately, some in this country, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Please remember, the sea is the Mediterranean. The river is the Jordan River. And what is in the middle is Israel.
I think it's instructive to hear that kind of thing from you to remind so many of us what's at stake and what the passion and emotion that's wrapped up in it is all about. It is troubling, leaving all that out, it's troubling, or some of that out, that the bodies aren't even cold yet, and you see such strong protests in support of Palestine and Palestinians, given the fact that you don't even have anything really to, protest against yet when it comes to a military operation. Now, I think
No, but if those demonstrators-
I think what they are protesting is what we were talking about before, which is Israeli disposition toward the Palestinians
Mark,
up to this point.
If the people protesting for Palestine would condemn what Hamas did, if they would condemn the slaughter of innocent Jews, but you haven't heard that, Mark, and no one else has. All they do is condemn Israel. And all I can tell you is when we are able to get above that, listen to what the protesters say. That's all I can ask you to do. I look for condemnation of the abominations committed by Hamas. And what I get in response, Mark, is a deafening silence.
John, thank you. I will say this, that at the end of this, when I think there'll be a lot of dust and a lot of pain, I hope that the international community rides in to help the Gazans and help in sort of a Marshall Plan program to build a real democracy. If they can literally move Hamas out and get rid of Hamas, at least as a political force, that would be a great, great thing. John, we're going to talk on Wednesday. I really appreciate you squeezing us in
Thank you
today.
very much, Mark, and I appreciate
And I'll be into your
that.
book by then. Your book arrived, and I'll get into it before I
Good.
see
And
you.
ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to support the Mark Thompson program.
Thank
That's
you, pal.
my advertisement.
And you as well on Around the World with John Rothmann, the podcast that's daily. Thanks, pal. Wow, there's a lot going on. Jeez. Rothmann with the passion. All right, there is much going on here. Tell me what you want to do, Albert, Kim. I have my favorite Britisher waiting.
Yeah, we might have to do a super sized news at the bottom.
Yeah, I think so.
We'll
I
double
think
the supers on that one.
Let's keep the conversation rolling with Anthony Davis.
All right. Then I will follow your lead then, and we'll get that going swiftly here.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Shadow Stevens. This is the Mark Thompson Show. Keep it to yourself.
Who's Mark Thompson?
There you see our email address, themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. Please, you can write me. I'll try to share a few emails in between all of our conversations. We've gotten received really terrific emails about Trump, about Israel, about Gaza, about the Palestinians, on any number of issues, or just those who are wishing us happy anniversary. This guy he's our favorite Britisher, so that alone should be enough. But he's creator of the 5-Minute News, and he is the Midas Touch host. How about it for Anthony Davis? Hello, sir.
Hello, sir. Nice to see you. How are you doing?
I'm well. It's just a lot to stomach these days, you know, with everything that you discuss on your show and that you know, even in your 5-Minute News you cover. How do you do the reducto on all that's going on in a 5-Minute News, Anthony Davis?
It's pretty difficult. I think that the way you achieve that is you just do the facts and none of the opinion, you know. I mean, this is a question I get asked a lot because obviously I have my own views, but 5-Minute News, my daily podcast, is an unbiased, non-partisan political news program, right? So not something that American people are very used to. Where I'm from, you know, you have to be non-partisan when you report the news. It's completely possible, so it's kind of no effort from my perspective. But I think a lot of Americans struggle. And you know, this is something that has come up a lot, hasn't it, with these debates like you were just having with your earlier guest, is that emotions run so high. And the idea that you can put aside your personal views and just report the facts is actually quite a difficult notion. And you know, when we're talking about Israel and Hamas and Gaza and the Palestinians, there is a bias. You know, there is an intrinsic bias in American news coverage and American allegiance because the US, the same with the UK, with, you know, Britain and France, created the Israeli state in 1948. So of course there's going to be a bias. You know, you can't get away from that. It's like it's the Brits think of it as theirs, Americans think of it as theirs, the French think of it as theirs. So they're never going to be like, oh, this didn't really work, because that's the reality of this, isn't it? That it doesn't really work. And Netanyahu he's been elected how many times now? 6 or 8 times in the last 30 years. I mean, I remember him when I was a kid. This is crazy to have somebody around for that long. So,
well, he's also become, I think, maybe this is the wrong word, but I'll use it anyway, radicalized with this really right-wing power grab that he's created in this fractionalized government of Israel.
He had to side with some of the furthest right people in order to, because he's being investigated for corruption, Mark. So of course he wants to maintain a government. And the critics say, well, this war cabinet, I mean, it prevents him from being the sole person responsible for this counterattack. The coalition government that he's created, it prevents him from being the sole person responding to this offensive. No one is denying that the attack by Hamas, which was a surprise attack, was anything other than atrocious. Right? Nobody is questioning that. But the national conversation or the international conversation has now moved to a place about how proportionate the response from Israel is. And that's what I find most interesting.
The spot that the Israelis find themselves in, I was talking about this in the last hour, it's such a difficult spot.
Yeah.
Let me just start with the real weird fact that has to be, that in any formula that comes up with an answer has to be taken into account, just in terms of what likely outcomes there are.
Yes.
The politics. If after 9/11, I was saying this the first half hour, we had said, well, we have to understand that, we're America and we can't necessarily just, go in and obliterate a country, whatever version of that might have been, it wouldn't have been politically survivable. You needed to do something. America felt all the things you just suggested, the surprise, awful attack of 9/11. Now, this is being viewed in Israel, as you're aware, as a much bigger deal than 9/11. It's more pogrom-like, it's more, Holocaust-like. But the politics demand you do something. I mean, even in America, leave aside this super right-wing guy, Netanyahu. So that's just the politics. Then there is sort of the humanity of it. It's you've just endured this awful thing. And the barbarism associated with it, the wanton barbarism that can't be countenanced. But then, as you say, what do you do? What is proportionate?
Well, I know what I would do. I mean, and it's nothing to do with me, Mark, but if it was, I would not retaliate. And I would say, okay, you've made your point. For the sake of these, 1,000 people plus that have lost their lives, we are not going to retaliate, but we are going to talk. And we're going to use this as a moment in history, as a line in the sand, to divide up the territory and learn to live in peace. And
so who has the agency, though, Anthony, to be part of that conversation, to be part of, who do you talk to?
Well, Mahmoud Abbas would be up for that. He is the Palestinian leader, although he's an old man. I think
he has no power also, as you know, right?
No, of course. And this is the problem because, Hamas are... Look, Palestinians are not Hamas. Hamas are a terrorist organization, as designated by the UK and the UN. So you've got a terrorist organization running your country. So how do you, or running your region. So how do you deal with that? You just have to, Netanyahu is the wrong guy right now, right? He has always been a bit of a warmonger. He's always been on the far right. He might keep his views personal, but, he is a populist. He has played a game to remain in power for decades. And this is the problem now. It's all come to a head. That surprise attack caused a knee-jerk reaction. You referenced 9/11. I mean, George W. Bush decided to pick the Iraqis to blame for 9/11 and went and bombed the hell out of them. And then Afghanistan, and then they found them in Pakistan. I mean, and they were Saudi Arabians. I mean, it was a complete mess.
Of course.
So, history is repeating itself, in my view. And somebody has to be the person to step up and say, okay, to respond is the obvious thing to do, but to not respond and to bring about some kind of peace talks is the right thing to do. And Anthony Blinken is run off his feet right now because he's the guy behind the scenes doing all the work.
Right. And certainly that which you've just described is, I would suggest, the preferred route. Sadly, not only is Netanyahu the wrong guy, as you say, but Hamas is the wrong group.
Yeah.
So you've got, a group that's committed to the elimination of every Jew on the planet and the elimination of Israel, certainly.
But there was a leader of Hamas who was available that Israel gave back in a prisoner swap a few years ago. Do you see what I mean? I mean, there have been opportunities to deal with this. And Israel have been, bombing the hell out of Gaza in multiple different styles and ways for years. And so, this is not a new thing. And to say, oh, this came as a surprise, I mean, they were rehearsing the paragliding thing just over the fence.
Well, that's part of the embarrassment and the humiliation, which, as Anthony says, is just crazy. I mean, it's you had every indication. The Egyptians warned you.
Yeah.
But how U.S. and Israeli intelligence ignored it, I mean, I think it was complacency. And also, this speaks to Netanyahu, his preoccupation, his utter preoccupation with this getting around the judiciary.
Yeah.
I mean, he had his really just dropped the ball completely and got complacent, as I say.
So he took his eye off the ball because he was distracted with his corruption trial and everything else. So he's the one that should take the fall for this, not innocent Palestinians. And, Joe Biden's been rather amazing. I don't know if you saw the 60 Minutes interview that he did yesterday or the day before. It's just gone online. I mean, to talk about the differences between Trump and Biden, Biden off the back of this could be heralded one of the kind of great war presidents. He has been measured and calm. And now that the initial, the initial attack is over and people have kind of come to terms with what happened, now he's starting to talk to Americans about the fact that Palestinians need somewhere to live and that innocent Palestinians need a place even to evacuate. We're hearing about bombs being dropped on these, safe exit routes out of Gaza. So he's starting to educate Americans that Hamas and Palestinians are not the same and that we need to start thinking about Palestinians as people who ultimately want peace. They don't want to live under the Hamas regime, but really there's no route to dealing with that. And go on.
I was just going to say, after 9/11, I was traveling overseas, and I was vehemently against the invasion of Iraq. I mean, I used to go round and round like as loud as I could scream at people. It was just crazy. It seemed like so concocted, clearly for
Yeah, and anyone with a brain knew that was the wrong target, right?
Oh my God! But anyway, as I traveled Europe, I remember having to say, people asked where I was from, and I said, I'm from the U.S. And then I had to say, and I don't support the war in Iraq. I don't support American militarism. I don't expect, and you began to try to separate yourself in many conversations from your government. I feel as though the Gazans would, if they could, separate themselves from Hamas, that we don't sanction what happened. That's not what we're about.
But they're being used as human shields.
Yeah,
right?
they're being used
so
as
if they were to say stuff like that, they'd get executed. And this is the problem. It's like living under the types of regimes we've seen in North Korea or in Russia. If you come out and speak against the authority, then, I mean, in North Korea, if you speak out against the authority or even break the law, you don't just get imprisoned or executed. They take your whole family. I don't think people realize how these dictatorships operate. And this is the problem here, is that obviously Hamas are an unknown quantity. And it's hard to differentiate between Palestinians and Hamas because they look the same, they dress the same. They put these headquarters under schools and hospitals. They purposely hide amongst civilians. That's part of their tactic. But, something very interesting happened the other day. There's been marches in the UK and London, pro-Palestinian marches, not pro-Hamas, as your earlier guest was saying, pro-Palestinian. There is a difference. And, I am pro-Palestinian as much as I am pro-Israeli. I'm not pro-Hamas. They're the terrorist organization, right? And if you want to talk about whether or not Netanyahu is a terrorist, well, that's another conversation for after this war has come and gone. And I'm sure that The Hague and the international community will have something to say about that, as they already are about some of the response. 6,000 bombs in 24 hours. That was more than were dropped on Afghanistan, during a year. And I should also add, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here. Do you know how many civilians were killed post 9/11 by the United States in theaters of war, Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia, other places? 500,000. 500,000 civilians caught up in this. Not to mention 7,000 U.S. personnel, military personnel, who've died in these wars. So war is dangerous. War means death. But the Israeli spokespeople, and this is the point I wanted to make, the Israeli spokespeople are seeing these peaceful protests supporting the Palestinians. I actually watched it, and I'm in the process of making a video about this. The Israeli government spokesperson came out and said, these people are marching in support of Hamas, and therefore, and I was like, whoa! And the newscaster, unfortunately, didn't stop him. No, they're not. And Israel are being blind as to how people are thinking. And the problem is, if you are either an Israeli or Israeli Jew, it's not just Jews in Israel, remember, plenty of Christians in Israel, and the Holy Land is just as holy for multiple religions, that there is an intrinsic bias to defend your own territory. And I personally don't have any links to Israel. I have been there once, but I don't have any links to it. So to me, Israel and potential Palestinian territory should be equal for equal people. But the Israelis, and certainly Netanyahu, they do not see it that way. And they will, put out propaganda to make it look like, this thing about beheading babies, that's not been verified, Mark.
Right.
Our own president said it out loud, but it hadn't been verified. The White House had to walk it back. There's a lot of propaganda out there.
The death of the babies was verified and is verified in horrifying ways, but you're right. There's been no independent confirmation of the beheading, which, by the way, is an odd distinction. I always feel as though but yet it's important, because war has disinformation of all sorts that infiltrates it.
It's overly emotional.
Yes, exactly.
And it's designed to bring about an emotion because Israel is seeking international support for its response.
But it's comical is the only word. In the darkest comical sense, ridiculous and absurd to take this horror, which is the killing of a baby. Okay, one baby after another. There were a lot killed, and somehow go. But I'm going to even amp it up more and say that there was beheading. So it's as you suggest, it's trying to create even higher ground. Hey, you've already got the high ground. Agreed. You don't need to create even higher ground by concocting a story.
The music festival was the highest ground for me, right? An event that was full of young people having a good time, minding their own business, and then suddenly the shooting starts.
Well, and many of them are peaceniks. There are more peaceniks in that crowd that was killed than you'll ever find in any other sort of random crowd. There are a lot of, even the occupants of the kibbutzes in that part of Israel, many of them are peaceniks. It's a bizarre situation. All right, my last couple of minutes here, and I love that we're visiting, and thank you for visiting, and thank you for wearing the same glasses that I have.
It's a pleasure.
Because it does add a legitimacy to me. But I want to talk about Jim Jordan. This guy, this dysfunctional government that we have in this country, has created the perfect storm for Jim Jordan to perhaps almost literally muscle his way to the speakership.
Yeah.
He has his game is the same as Trump's. It's one of intimidation. It's one of physical intimidation. People feel scared to go up against this guy.
Well, because he's a bit of an unknown quantity, isn't he? He's one of these. He's never voted for a bill on anything. The guy is a manipulator. He obviously has all this form when he worked in a school and covered up the abuse of young people who are now coming forward as adults, dozens of them, and yet that doesn't seem to affect his chances of getting the speakership. I was thinking last night, what will U.S. politics look like with Jim Jordan as Speaker? It is horrifying to think of how this will play out, because he really is a bottom feeder. You know, he is the worst of them. And when I watch him in these committee hearings, without his jacket on, pointing and shouting, it's all propaganda. Nothing he says is based in truth. I can't work out if he's just an idiot or whether he's a very calculated propagandist, because some of the stuff he says is so dumb. The arguments that he presents are so dumb. He is a terrible, terrible person. And you know, there's a lot of terrible people in politics, right? They're there. I mean, look at George Santos screaming in the corridors the other day, trying to distract from his own indictment by claiming that somebody else was, you know, anti-Israel and running. And I mean, it was the weirdest thing, swearing, the weirdest thing. But Jim Jordan is so weird and so dangerous. And there's going to be a vote tomorrow at noon.
He doesn't, at least by the pure book, the X's and O's wouldn't suggest he'd have enough votes to get in.
Yeah.
But what I worry about is that the sheer tiresome nature of vote after vote after vote, and Jordan will wait to the votes. He doesn't care. There's no
as they did with
humiliation in this
McCarthy, 15 rounds of voting to get
Right.
there, and shouting on the House floor and almost fisticuffs on the House floor.
And Jordan, I think, as Anthony has correctly said, is sort of this, he's all about recriminatory politics. He's all about revenge. He's a fire-breathing dragon of hate.
Yeah.
And he'll get nothing done legislatively for the people, but he will carry the water of Donald Trump. And when it comes to J6, he was on the phone a lot with Donald Trump, and and has denied subpoenas, wouldn't appear before the committee, knows a lot about January 6th that will never, I mean, he's
a plotter and an insurrectionist. And
exactly.
You know, this is the problem, isn't it? That we have one insurrectionist who's trying to run for president. We have another one who's trying to run for House Speaker. And my view, I think I said this to you last time, is that the insurrection is still going on. You know, January 6th was the riot. But in terms of the work that is going on behind the scenes to install Donald Trump, this is all still happening. And it's manipulation, and it's a coup in plain sight. And, you know, we deserve better. As a country, we deserve better.
That's so well said. And the other thing I would just say is that even right now, leave aside trying to get Trump elected, the way that the administration has been derailed in terms of confirmations, in terms of military promotions, and there's a serious effort underway, and I suspect it will be successful come November 17th, to turn the lights off, to essentially shut the government down.
But that's all part of the insurrection, right? The idea that the government shutdown happens under Joe Biden's administration because it happened 3 times under Trump. This is all designed to make Biden look bad and manipulate it so that the Republicans can again use false propaganda. And, you know, I want the Republicans to have I want the Republican Party, but I also want conservative people to have decent representation. Right, I want them to have a leader who can engage in balanced political discourse. And they deserve it as much as Democrats deserve it. And I don't sit in either camp. There's no political party that even comes close to representing my political views in the U.S.
Here is a quick comment for you, and I just wonder if you can respond to it, since you might have a better perspective than anyone. Aussie Rules asks, does UK also have its Jim Jordans, Santoses, and DJTs?
Well, yeah, Boris Johnson was Donald Trump in a blonde wig. I mean, very different people, and obviously a much smaller country, 65 million versus 330 million. So different scale of country, different scale of economy. You know, I think California is a bigger economy than the whole of the UK. But it all boils down to people who are populists and people who are, you know, they just don't care much for humanity. They put themselves first. And, you know, this is what we've seen with Donald Trump recently, putting himself ahead of anything else. You know, he, in fact, in a conversation he had the other day, I saw him being interviewed, he compared himself to Jesus. You know, he said, I am basically more famous than Jesus. And then he pretends that he's like, oh, well, you know, I didn't say that. This guy I was golfing with basically said it. And I was watching him during this interview, and I was like, he totally made that up. Like, he obviously in bed one night or sitting up in the middle of the night watching TV and truthing. He's like, how do I get to a point where I can say that I'm more famous than Jesus? And then the next day he says something to backtrack to that moment. Oh, I can see his brain working because he's an imbecile. The clip's out there. It's so funny.
Oh my God, I have to get that.
Don't talk to me that way.
All right. Anthony Davis, you're so great, man. So enjoy you. You are my favorite Britisher. That'll never change.
You're very sweet.
The creator of the 5-Minute News and the Midas Touch host. Midas Touch, as you know, just a massive, massive franchise, and because it's got great people like Anthony as part of it. And again, I draw attention to the fact that we wear the same glasses, so in a sense, that makes me as intellectually gifted as you.
We also have the same family of microphones, so I think
it is true. This mic is the same as you see. That is the same microphone. I love that you noticed that too. Yeah. Come visit again, will you please?
You bet. All the best to you,
Anthony Davis. You too, pal. Love it. Love, 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 love.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Feels great.
When they raided Mar-a-Lago, God didn't like that.
Albert, from here on out, we will, I think, get into some other news. Kim's newscast will recenter us with some other stuff. And we also have some greetings, anniversary wishes as we round year one into year two.
Was it Friday? What's technically our first day of year two?
Friday was technically our first day of year two.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is technically the
two
second
of year
day
two.
of year two.
It's 2 for 2.
2. Albert, you want to run those greetings after and those anniversary wishes after Kim's news?
After the double-sized news, Kim's probably been collecting.
Oh yeah,
collecting plenty of stories. We haven't.
Yeah, that's right.
Any,
yeah, you've been bumped twice, so you can do a supersized newscast.
What happens? Yeah, I keep then I see this good story and I see that good story, and they all go in. Yeah,
I love it.
Kim, how are you?
All right,
you got the Oprahs of news stories coming at you, Kim.
Big. The commish is here. Kim is here. We've had some great guests so far, and we still have some big news stories. There's a housing bill that was signed. Maybe if Kim doesn't have it in her newscast, I'll get into it a little bit. It's Newsom just signed it. Could be pretty big time.
We signed a bunch of them. Several
right.
housing
There are
bills,
a bunch of them. That's exactly right. Smash the like button like a boss.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
Smash it with your iron rod. Love having you here. Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and this report is sponsored by, yes, the incredible people at Tenuta Vineyards.
I never know
Livermore.
when she says by the incredible people at and I'm thinking,
I was looking for the picture.
Everybody incredible, so I don't know.
No,
who this
not
exactly
everybody. It's a select few.
Okay.
Look at that. That is incredible. Look at the vineyards and the beautiful wine flight.
Yeah, that is a
right
nice
now.
scene. Wow.
I could use some right now. I could sit right at that window and look right at it after the conversation we've been having. I just need to pour more wine.
Wow.
Keep the flights coming.
You should apologize for how you feel.
Yeah, okay.
All of the wine needs to be here at my house. So yeah, Tenuta Vineyards. We'll talk more about them in just a moment. But first, we're back into it. Because, yes, artillery and rocket fire continue for another night as Israeli troops stand ready to attack the border with Gaza. As fighting rages on there, food, water, and medical supplies are in very short supply in Gaza. The death toll has surpassed 4,100 since Israel-Hamas war, or the Israel-Hamas war, I should say, began on October 7th. Meanwhile, there's a new poll that shows a majority of Americans want the U.S. to help civilians in Gaza get to safety. 78% of participants in the Reuters Ipsos poll agreed with a statement American diplomats should actively be working on a plan to allow civilians fleeing fighting in Gaza to move to a safe country. On the other side, 22% of Americans disagreed with that statement. Along party lines, 94% of Democrats backed U.S. efforts to help Gaza civilians, 73% of independents, and 71% of Republicans supported those efforts. Israel has ordered civilians in northern Gaza to flee the southern part of the territory ahead of a possible ground assault. And what's interesting, Mark, there is you don't see many countries warning ahead of time. Right? Usually if someone gets bombed, it's a surprise attack. And in this case, there was a warning issued. So I have to say, at least they have time to even try to get out.
You're saying sort of in the inhumanity of war, there is a little bit of humanity or an attempt at it or,
right. Something to say, this is coming, go to safety. I take that as what you will, make of it what you will, but I'm just saying factually, at least that happened, and that doesn't often happen in war. President Biden, meanwhile, is delaying today's planned visit to Colorado as war between Israel and the Palestinian militant group Hamas carries on. The president was scheduled to visit a wind tower manufacturing plant in Colorado today, but will instead be staying in Washington, D.C. to hold meetings with his national security team. So that's the difference. And yes, we're mentioning Jim Jordan. The vote on Jim Jordan's bid to become Speaker of the House is expected Tuesday at noon. It remains unclear if the Ohio Republican will have the 217 votes needed to secure the position. While the GOP holds a slight majority in the House, some Republicans are firmly against Jordan, but he has been amassing more support now. So it'll be interesting to see how that vote unfolds tomorrow. Ford's chairman is calling on the United Auto Workers now to make a deal to end what they call acrimonious talks. So this is a picture of Bill Ford, and he is saying that he's warning the ongoing strike by the UAW is threatening the future of his company and the American automotive industry as a whole. The nationwide UAW strike against the big three automakers started September 15th. And again, he says, Bill Ford says, make a deal and end the back and forth. So,
well, I'll just mention that labor is having a minute in America. There are all these industries, Hollywood actors, healthcare employees, automotive workers. This is a remarkable time in modern America. 330,000 Americans, I was reading this morning, have participated in strikes since September. That's a pretty remarkable stat. And UAW, chief among the UAW seems to be getting some significant concessions, but obviously now some pushback as well.
Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is facing a deadline tomorrow to hand over documents on a coronavirus nursing home policy from early in the pandemic. Here he is. The bipartisan congressional panel is requesting this material as it investigates complaints about the surge in nursing home deaths during the COVID outbreak. A spokesperson for Cuomo calls it a political move since the Justice Department has already reviewed all of this data.
I do hug and kiss people casually.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. This isn't even about the hugging and kissing. This is about the
nursing
absolute,
home,
it seems clear, mistake, which was to move these COVID patients into these nursing homes. It absolutely created not only a health hazard, it produced deaths.
Right?
Yeah. I'm not a fan,
Let's talk about flag football for a second. It is becoming an Olympic sport right in time for the 2028 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. Flag football. The International Olympic Committee announced today that baseball, softball, cricket, lacrosse, and squash have also been added to showcase iconic American sports while also bringing international sports to the country. Yes. Cities hosting future games will be able to request other sports when they're selected too.
Commissioner, how do you feel about that? Flag football being added to your, I don't see you supporting that, but maybe you do.
Yeah, it's I feel like the only real football with quotes, air quotes, that can make it in with pigskin like that. But I'm a collegiate ultimate frisbee player, so I'm still pushing for that to be an official
so you
sport.
do welcome other sports, Commissioner.
I do, and ultimate frisbee is very popular worldwide, and including my Philippines team. So I think we could do well.
So Albert's in support of it, Kim.
Albert, thank you.
Yeah, that's
If Albert's in support of it, then I think we should
Wrestling
all
in the
be in
Olympics.
support of it.
I remember they removed one of the wrestling events from the Olympics, which is ridiculous. It's like one of the first ever events. So.
Okay, let's go to Meta now, because Meta is stepping up enforcement of user content, and this is all related to the Israel-Hamas war. The Facebook, Instagram, and Threads parent updating its policies against violent posts and also misinformation. Experts fluent in Hebrew and Arabic are working in a special operations center now because of all the misinformation. Meanwhile, X, formerly known as Twitter, fired an employee who publicly challenged the company's return to work plans. You challenge me, I will fire you. That is the claim from the National Labor Relations Board. Owner Elon Musk allegedly telling employees to make it the office policy, to the office physically, and if they didn't, their resignation would be accepted.
Sayonara, sucker.
Yeah, that's a tough. That's
it.
a tough memo to get. Get your ass in here, otherwise your ass is not working here anymore. I mean, that's
This is no picnic, no summer camp.
I guess that was a sort of.
Did you know today is Bosses Day?
No. What
It
does
is
that
bosses.
mean? What does that mean?
It means the day we celebrate bosses. Like, it's a thank you to bosses. So
Wow.
technically, since your name is on the marquee and you are my boss, I will say to you, thank you for letting me work from home without threat of termination. There you go.
First, thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's yeah, very, very. Who knew? Very
You can't
exciting.
shit me during the news. It's my turn to talk.
Yeah, how dare you, Albert? Don't
How
shoot
da-
not
how
during the
dare
news.
you people?
Yeah, you're
Phil McCracken.
okay, Albert.
Phil
Stop
McCracken.
it. Now you're just throwing what is it? Wrenches into the mix.
So 32 kayakers with the
I leaned
rich...
over.
Okay, Albert.
I leaned
Stop
over.
it. Stop it.
Really?
Yeah.
That's where
Okay,
we're
go
going?
ahead.
32 kayakers with the Rich City Rays kayaking group out of Richmond buzzed a berthed oil tanker at the Chevron oil refinery on Sunday afternoon. It's pretty brave. A company security guard with a megaphone told the paddlers, "Back up beyond the 100-yard safety zone." That's
Wow.
my megaphone voice.
It was like being there.
Yeah, right? 10 boaters then came even closer. The activists did not stop the departure of this oil tanker, but they say they will try again as they take a stand against climate change, and they're going to try to get in the way of these really, really giant oil rigs, or, the giant boats, ships, tankers.
This is the equivalent of the many environmentalists who shackle themselves to trees and this sort of thing. I mean, it's a way to gain attention, and I have mad respect for many of them because they put themselves at great risk to do it.
They say they've grown up in the shadow of these refineries, and they've been breathing the air spewed out by these refineries, and they've been drinking the water, and they are tired of the oil refineries and what they do to the environment. And so they're going to take these little kayaks and paddle them out and try to make a difference. So that's very brave when you look at the size of those boats versus an oil tanker. Yikes. Now for some lighter news. There is a video for a New Jersey woodcutting business that's going viral. I don't know if we have the video, Albert. I sent it to you. But Tobias Smith, who manages Willard Brothers Woodcutters in Trenton, New Jersey, put together a video where he sings about the company's wood sale. I don't know if we have. Do we have
Albert,
it?
we don't have it. Can you play it?
We might have it. I don't know. Let me take.
It's got
kayakers.
music on it. That's why you don't want to play it. Albert, talk to me. Talk to me.
Yes,
Kamish.
there's music. I'm going to play it muted, but
Okay.
they said in the description they hired a production company to do this, so I'm going to stop playing it right now, too. I just played a couple seconds.
Kim, you do get us demonetized a lot, so I'm
My
asking.
bad. I apologize to the
Yes.
Mark Thompson Show community.
Exactly.
My bad. I'm sorry.
So Smith's brother posted the video on X, formerly known as Twitter, writing, "My brother made this video for our fall wood sale, and it's the worst thing you've ever seen." Apparently, many agreed they couldn't stop watching it, making the video a viral sensation.
Yeah, sometimes it's so bad it's good. You know,
it's a wild
idea.
Bad.
It just might work.
It did work.
So if you want to look at it, it's Willard Brothers Woodcutters. It's their fall sale. Like you would actually seek out a commercial, but this one, maybe not so bad. Okay, so this report is sponsored by, yes, the fine people, the wonderful people, I'll even call them amazing, at Tenuta Vineyards. They are so lovely, and they have some grape stomps coming up. These are events that are so fun. The events fill up really fast. They have a limited amount of space. These are catered luncheons. A couple of the grape stomps have sold out. They did add some new dates in November. You get 10% off because you're an exclusive Mark Thompson Show listener. And I don't know of anywhere else where Tenuta Vineyards in Livermore is offering this deal. Call Rich. He's at 925-699-4576. You have to tell him, smash it with your iron rod. Yes, you do. And that's when you get your 10% off.
Smash it with your iron rod.
That's right. And then he can tell you all the dates. You can sign up for a grape stomp or a trip out to the winery to go do some wine tasting. Or, hey, just even order yourself some Why Are You Yelling Mark Thompson Show Red? Or, hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson Pinot Grigio? It's all good. And if you have ordered in the past, take a look. Is it time to restock? Might be. The winter is coming and we all need to stock up ahead, don't we? I think so.
You don't want to be without your wine for the
I'm
winter.
telling you.
Yeah.
Right? Right. You don't. You need this is what you need.
You got it.
I'm Kim McAllister. This is the amazing Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This is Mark Thompson.
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
Hey, Mark. Belated anniversary greetings from us out here in the Windy City. Just want to say we love your great team and, of course, all your great guests, people like Katz, Avila, Shore, Johnson, and Rothman make the show great. Really love that you're trying to have some intelligent, thoughtful conversation from a bit more of a humanistic and open-minded perspective. Definitely something the world needs more of these days. So keep it up. Here's to a great year and many more to come.
Yeah, that was really nice, Albert. That was from Brad in Chicago.
Yeah.
Really nice.
Really, really cool. Thank you. There's one other, I think, isn't there? Didn't I send you one other one? Because I didn't look at it. Looked funny, and I didn't want to. I wanted to make my reaction real, so I didn't want to look at it ahead of time. Do you have it, or when do you want to run it?
Let's read a couple of the emails so I could just double check on the audio real quick, and then we'll do it right after the emails.
Read a couple of the emails.
Just at the bottom of the rundown.
The emails, I believe. One morning last October, this is to the whole crew, she says. Did we read this? It's kind of funny. Let me read it again. You might have missed it because I can't remember an hour ago. So maybe other people.
It doesn't sound familiar.
Okay. That's the funniest thing all day. I've read three words, and Kim says, no, it doesn't sound familiar to me.
One morning last October, I started thinking to myself, I know what morning they're talking about, but I haven't heard this message.
Oh, this is great.
Kim, how are you?
All right. Happy one-year anniversary to the whole crew. One morning last October, I tuned in to get my daily dose of, quote, old white man AM talk radio.
Oh, yeah, I have read this one, but
Yeah,
that's okay. It's
exactly.
still really good. Yeah.
Not calling y'all white men, by the way. When I first started listening to KGO several years ago, I was shocked at myself for enjoying a medium that I'd assumed was something only old white dudes would be into. So that's what I called it. I was able to catch Mark's odd sign-off, and then, yikes. The days following were pretty empty, honestly. I hadn't realized how much I relied on KGO for news, information, and balanced analysis of everything going on in the world. What was I supposed to do now? Start reading borderline QAnon conspiracy, quote, articles posted on Facebook by the backwoods hillbillies from my hometown, who I'm still Facebook friends with, out of pity? Listen to droning, suit-clad talking heads on national news programs and die to death of boredom? So I hustled my little old white ass. There's a theme here. So I hustled my little old white ass over to the Twitter machine to see what y'all were saying. And when the YouTube show started up, I was so happy and relieved. Watching you guys build this back up from the ashes was a wonderful process, and I'm very grateful to you all for your perseverance and drive to keep the machine going. Every day I smash the like button.
Smashed
How about
it with your iron rod.
with my rod of equity and mercy? Oh, yeah. And appreciation. And now I refer to my daily shows as, quote, old man AM talk pirate satellite radio podcast YouTube live stream broadcast shows. Wow. It's a mouthful, and I need to work on that a bit. Cheers to many more years, fam. By the way, I hate the sound of my own voice on recording, so no video audio for you. Instead, here's a photo of me enjoying a morning brew in my official show mug. I can't believe I ran out of Coachella Valley coffee again. No. Oh, well. Heather.
There she is. That's Heather. Yeah.
How about Heather? Very nice.
I have one, too, that I don't think we've heard before, and it comes also with a picture. That's Nancy.
Oh, hi, Nancy. Oh, she's not actually with us. Okay,
No.
go ahead.
Nancy says, hi, everyone. A year ago, I jumped in the car and turned on KGO, and it was gone. I tried not to panic. I thought maybe they moved to a new number on the dial. No, we didn't. I searched, and I couldn't find TMTS, the Mark Thompson Show. I was lost without the show and the station. I Googled KGO, I found the town hall, and then KGO in Exile, and I was so relieved to know that you were starting your show on YouTube. I have enjoyed every single minute, and I appreciate all the talent each of you bestow, ding, upon us. Love you all. Mark, Kim, Courtney, Albert, Tony, FPJD. Happy anniversary. Love, Nancy Vernazza.
Oh, that's
so
really cool.
nice.
Thank you, Nancy.
So pretty. You're so pretty, Nancy.
We have a very attractive audience.
We do.
Happy anniversary, Mark, Kim, Tony, Albert, and John. This will be my last one. Absolutely love, in capital letters, your show and listen every day, as do my husband and son. I, too, was shocked and saddened when KGO abruptly went off the air last year, but I'm so glad you were able to create your own show on YouTube, which is even better. Mark, we love your humor and laugh. It makes us smile every time, and appreciate your intelligence and insightful comments, as well as those of Kim.
Oh, that's nice.
Again, you got to mention Kim. You can't just leave it with me.
You're so mean.
When will you people learn?
Mean.
It would take nothing. You just put a period at the end of the stuff about me. All right. Anyway. As well as those of Kim. The content of your show is great, with the wonderful guest speakers, drops, dings, bestowing of the rod of equity and mercy, etc. Plus, what would our Fridays be without Friday Fabulous Florida? Here's to many more years of a very successful show. With much appreciation and best wishes, Marilyn O'Keefe. Thank you, Marilyn.
Oh, that's
very
really
nice.
And we could end this little groups of anniversary
love
shout-outs.
fest.
We have the video from Debbie ready.
Okay, go for it. I haven't seen this. Let's go for it.
Well, hey there, we're just a couple of regular Joes from Idaho to say how much we like the Mark Thompson Show. We try to listen every day, but many times it's on delay.
We love the many players and their engaging comments, like Mark, Kim, John, and Courtney, with comedic laments, and Albert and Tony, who make the show flow without them managing drops. It's just not the same show. We're just good old Idahoans and don't know big city stuff. But these are some of our favorite bits, of which we never get enough.
We love the Florida Fabulous Fridays and the airplane sky stories and the mysteries of Monday murders, but sometimes they are too gory. Your talkers are favorites and we love and want to hear more. You know, that duo of an hombre named Avila and Beach Guy Shore.
And then the two Davids, who are always a hoot, as they decry Trump and his illegal loot. And let me be very clear about Wednesday's John. He is an informational political bomb. Congratulations, the Mark Thompson Show, keeping us entertained for a whole full year, while also educating a couple of farts about what's going on far and near.
That is terrific. Thank you so much,
funny.
guys.
I love it.
That was really special. Yeah. That was really great. In Idaho. I think they're in Idaho. Wow. Well, we really had a great time with our...
I love the snow shovel, too. I mean,
I'd love to see Tony add that to the group. We had like a 20-minute compilation of videos up there, people who have anniversary shout-outs, and we'll try to add those. I'll ask Tony if he can, add them. But really, really cool. Thanks to everybody who has sent in stuff and shown us so much love. It's so important. Hey, we're crowdfunded. We're only here because of you, and we work to evolve the show to the next place with some conflicting and contrasting opinions that I think you'll find in the days ahead, particularly given everything going on in the Middle East. So, and your emails, I read, you send me links, I look at the stuff you send me, and so I hope that you'll find this to become an even richer place in terms of both information and entertainment. So all of that is stuff that we will work on. How about Stan Pollock, my favorite CPA? Big shout out.
Big shout out.
Always appreciate John Rothmann. Thanks for having him, and happy tax day, y'all. Oof, wow.
It is the day. We had that extension because of, I think it was fires and such, and now we have until today, October 16th, to file. It's a mad scramble over here at my house.
I'll get to that in a second. I'll get to this in a second. This is from Betsy. Oh, no. I'll get to Betsy now, but then I'll get to the other thing in a second. Okay. All right. Now I'll get to this then. I sent a video. Did you not get it? Says Maud. Did we not run
I have a
it?
couple videos that we still haven't played that I've pocketed, so we'll get through them throughout the week. And
you're in Albert's pocket, Maud.
Yeah.
That's
Albert,
what
thank
it is.
you.
Okay, well then Albert is to blame, Maud, and I'm glad, Maud, thank you for that tickler and reminder
Yeah.
that Albert has an obligation as producer to make sure that Maud's video gets on, Albert.
Tickler?
I just...
Why are you yelling?
That's cute.
Yeah.
Albert, thank you.
And sorry about that, Maud. I don't know how it happened, except I do know how it happened. It's Albert's fault. Now, Betsy... can you read me the last name?
Betsy Daly Caffell.
Betsy Daly Caffell. Wow.
That's so
Super
nice.
sticker. Big shout out. $50 contribution for today's show. And I'm not going to.
You should, though. I think today's a good day to cry.
This is every day is a good day to cry, but
let it
Betsy
out.
really may take me over the line. Thank you so much.
It's really nice, Betsy.
Betsy and everyone who begins the second year with us. I want you to, whether you've contributed or not, whether you've smashed the like button or not, although I do need you to smash it.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
I want you to receive, Betsy, you shall receive first, and then everyone else shall receive.
Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
Again, you do nothing but receive.
Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
This is good for a lifetime.
Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
Carry that always.
Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
Very good.
So sparkly, and your voice is so mellow that it's hypnotism. It's like hypnotizing.
I am in something of a trance right now, Kim. Please.
Question from Karen for Albert. What happened to Jimmy GQ? He ended up being taken to the hospital on a stretcher. Will he be out for the season?
Oh, that's right. Jimmy Garoppolo. What happened to the most handsome man? I love watching him. He's just so handsome. What happened, though?
Yeah, he was taken to the hospital during the game, which is, something's going on. There hasn't been any updates, but it was a back injury.
It
so
didn't affect his looks, though, you're telling me.
No, he still looks great.
Okay. Feels great, baby. All right.
The physical looks, the play, good enough for my fantasy team. I have a couple wide receivers on that team.
Okay.
And I need him to stay because he throws it to my guys. So I hope he's fine for his career and for my fantasy team, Mark.
Yeah, I hope he's fine, too. I love the guy. He's everything I have never been. Handsome, athletic.
Put up your pants, my man. Pull up those pants.
No, I don't think... Anyway, I'm very excited that he's going to be okay, you think, but there's no word as to whether he'll play this coming Sunday?
No updates. So
okay.
We'll get that throughout the week. And, he still looks great. Look at him in the Raiders. And with the whites coming in on the sides, too.
I know. He looks a little even more handsome with the gray in there.
Yeah.
Oof. Wow.
I hope he's all
We should
right.
just keep this picture up during the show, Mark. I think we could just.
Well, I have a mad crush on him.
Feels great, baby.
I don't know what to do. Yeah. Man crush, MT? Yeah. Man crush is right. I've got it, baby. I got it bad for Jimmy. Yeah. Easy on the O-hosts. That's right.
Mhm.
Julie.
That's right, Julie. He is easy on the O-hosts.
Rite Aid is closing. They filed for bankruptcy. I don't know if they're closing. Sometimes they, you just file for bankruptcy to protect yourself from.
Reorganized, yeah.
Exactly. They say that there are more than 1,000 lawsuits that say that Rite Aid filled illegal prescriptions for painkillers. So because of these opioid suits, Rite Aid is sort of seeking this bankruptcy protection. Billions of dollars in debt, declining sales, and more than 1,000 federal, state, and local lawsuits claiming that they filled thousands of these illegal prescriptions for painkillers. All of those things lead to Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in New Jersey, where they filed. That's where they're centered, but it, of course, covers the entire company, Rite Aid. They also have a new CEO, and it's one of many drugstore chains dealing with lawsuits stemming from the deadly abuse of opioids in America, right? Mm-hmm. There is a Justice Department complaint against them, so yeah, pretty serious stuff ahead. And we've seen it happen in so many court cases, Catholic Church doing the same thing in some areas. Bankruptcy protection is the thing. I wanted to sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to Jimmy Garoppolo, Jimmy GQ, as he was called. Do you think that in football, when, this is a sport of where you have to be kind of a young man, right? That he should have let his hair go gray like that? Because does it make people feel like, oh, he's too old and he should retire? I'm already seeing someone in the chat saying he gets injured a lot, he should retire. Does the fact that he came out with his, silver fox hair showing, does that mean, I don't know, was it a wise decision? Should he have put some Grecian formula in there and not gone for the gray?
Absolutely not. I'll go to the commissioner on this, but no, please, it's how you perform on the field. He said, Kurt Warner was older as he came on, and if you go back in time, George Blanda, you can Google some of these names of people who played even at the quarterback position, really to older ages, and they perform great. It's really all about how you perform. That's the good and bad of football. Doesn't matter. You're not going to get sympathy for being older, and you're not going to get derision for being older. If you're older and you put up the numbers, they're going to love you for. Look at Tom Brady. Tom Brady is celebrated
but he wasn't gray. He didn't look old. Like, if you look old, people are going to start thinking, dude's old, right?
Commish, I turn to you. Commish, does it matter?
You're spot on, Mark. If you do well at any point in football, the quarterback position is a highly coveted, and they're compensated for that. So you even saw it like with Michael Vick going through ton of scrutiny. Obviously what he did was wrong, and he still had a chance for a comeback because he plays quarterback and he's really good. So if you could do anything good at quarterback, you always have a job.
Yeah, really does. But believe me, I love the fact that you focused on the superficial. I applaud that. I understand it.
It is what it is. Our society is what it is. I'm just saying. Okay. I like the gray, but it does make people think, oh, he's. But
you are spot on, Kim, about the NFL has the shortest turnout. You're only in there for like a cup of coffee, the 3 seasons, and that's it for the rest of your life.
See, so. Mark, Albert says I'm right.
But like I said again, the quarterback is a little different, and Jimmy has shown a couple seasons of competence, and that's good enough for hundreds of millions of dollars.
I'll tell you what, I think he's a good quarterback. And the big thing is that he, does have trouble staying healthy. Although, to be fair to him, give him credit for hanging in with the Niners. I mean, I forget how many games he started, but a bunch. I mean, I want to say 8 to 10.
And he was a 10-point lead away from winning the Super Bowl. So let's not forget that he was actually close to doing it. If he won it, he would have been a Niner legend.
That's absolutely right. Thank you.
He was that close.
That's why Albert's the commissioner, because of comments like that.
Thank you, Albert.
Albert, I would like to stay longer if I could.
No.
We should just start a sports show with us three. Just try to figure it out.
Take some calls and
add to the lineup.
Let me tell you something. The Niners needed that. They're going to come back stronger next week.
get rid of Moody. We need Robbie Gould back. Just the classic radio takes.
This is the longest week in the world for the Niners kicker. Hey, we've tried to cover a lot of serious stuff today, leave you with a little stuff that's on the lighter side. If you want truly to forget your troubles for a few minutes, the After Party Live is beginning on the After Party Live channel.
We'll do it live.
Yeah.
I'll write it and we'll do it live.
And they do it live. So John and Kim get underway there. Tomorrow, the Pulitzer Prize winner David K. Johnston, and more revelations out of the Middle East and beyond. Thank you for your emails and your input, and until tomorrow.
I'm Shadow Stevens for The Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
We'll share some videos tomorrow, too.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
There's still one or two that we haven't gotten to, and until then, bye-bye.